Let's see. It's March 20th, 2022. We're not even in the last week of March yet, and there's already so much to reflect on. And there's a lot of things that are difficult for me to wrap my head around. We saw a man with a dick beat out two women in a women's national championship freestyle swimming competition. It takes real balls to be a champion women's swimmer. We saw the steady and persistent push towards a global war with more flagrant propaganda as the White House openly paid off legacy media companies and social media influencers to peddle health, disinformation, and pro-war messaging with our tax dollars. We saw Pfizer release by court order 10,000 documents on its clinical trials that they wanted sealed until 2075, showing huge fatal errors and over 1,000 short-term adverse events in their new drug that is being forced on billions of people. We saw that they also made record profits, cashing in more than any other drug throughout any other time in history. Again, paid for with our tax dollars. We saw the CEO of that same company, the largest felonious big pharma corporation in history, advocating for a fourth dose of its highly ineffective and dangerously experimental product, and no one batted a fucking eye. We saw the criminal mastermind and fraud, Dr. Fauci, is still getting paraded around on mainstream media, telling us that we should get a fourth dose and that a more dangerous wave could be coming. We saw children continue to be abused and sacrificed at the altar of science by forcing them to cover their faces and subjecting them to taking dangerous and experimental drugs. We saw Department of Justice take aim at parents who refuse to subject their children to medical abuse or who oppose the teaching of pedophiliac, sexual, or racially motivated indoctrination. We watched once democratic countries spiral into authoritarianism and so-called elected officials become tyrants. We learned that many of them and their cabinets and advisors have all been infiltrated by a World Economic Forum with a global agenda to transform the world into something that looks like modern-day communist China. We learned that one of the WEF's top scientific and AI advisors, a man named Yuval Noah Harari, advocates that humans are now hackable animals, and the whole idea that humans have a soul or a spirit that gives us free will is over. We will be reduced to nothing more than program-obeying automatons working together to further the visions of the elite class. We saw a glimpse into the corruption and collusion of a deep state that has taken a stranglehold of the Democratic and Republican parties, lawmakers, the media, and intelligence communities that are all part of this military-industrial complex, when the New York Times admitted Hunter Biden's laptop was in fact real. We learned that they and the Clintons fabricated the hoax that Donald Trump was being supported by Russia in the 2016 election, and that they also colluded to call the Biden laptop story Russian disinformation and propaganda. We learned that these were all lies and that all they do is lie. And in fact, had this story broken during the 2020 election when the New York Post had originally published it, it might have changed the outcome of the entire election had the American public discovered Biden's corrupted ties to Ukraine. Now we're seeing gas prices at home soar as sanctions are put on Russian oil in a so-called effort to combat its war against Ukraine. We saw India buy that same oil, meaning Russia is doing just fine selling its oil on the open market, and that the only ones being sabotaged are Americans. We saw the continued systematic devaluation of the US dollar as more money printing and poor fiscal policies lead us into record inflation, and of course, we saw this blamed on Russia. We saw the United States devolve from a world power with a strong economy to a banana republic whose currency can no longer be relied on for the global reserve currency. And we see countries like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran stepping up to the plate to create their own petrodollar. We saw our borders continue to be invaded with people flooding across from around the world in an effort to intentionally undermine our political and economic policies and to foment instability, violence, and chaos across the country. We saw a brain-dead POTUS and his fire-crotch minister of propaganda toe the line and lie to the public every time a camera was put in front of their faces. We saw every mainstream media organization read the same script and host the same bloodthirsty neocon warmongers advocating for intervention in a war we have no position in. We continue to silently witness the decades-long war and genocides in Palestine, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. We saw the doomsday clock tick down to 100 seconds to midnight, bringing the world closer to a global geothermal nuclear war. And we saw anybody who called out attention to any of these things be silenced, censored, deplatformed, demonetized, discredited, smeared, libeled, character assassinated, labeled a right-wing extremist, a racist, a bigot, a Trump supporter, anti-science postulator, and a Russian puppet. Anything to prevent the truth from coming out, right? Congratulations, we did it. We're one step closer to ridding the earth of ourselves, and we did it willingly. They didn't need huge ground troop invasions or military might or World War III. They just fabricate the narrative and tell the media how to sell it to us. Billions of us already took the clot shot and walked ourselves right into the gas chambers. It's just a matter of time before the short-term adverse events become midterm and long-term events and get covered up under the guise of cancer or other autoimmune or degenerative diseases. You know, because strokes and blood clots are the new normal, even for kids. We've all been sold a great lie, supported with more lies under the guise of health and safety and democracy. There is no democracy. There is no freedom. There is only top-down control grid of carefully curated information used to craft our thoughts and opinions for global hegemony. We're mere pawns in a global chess game where our thoughts and energy are used to create our reality in a way that's not too dissimilar from the Matrix movie. It is the way that we act and react to their narratives that facilitates their takeover of humanity and their control over us. I believe we are now living in the generation that Aldous Huxley prophetically spoke about in his 1932 book, Brave New World. Here is a direct quote from Huxley in his interview with Mike Wallace in 1958, which can still be found in full online. He says, "There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak, producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it." It's clear Huxley was a visionary. We are now seeing the emergence of this global dictatorship and the mechanisms of the cage-free open-air death camps in which we all live. We must fight back with our dollars, with our votes, and with our lives if necessary. If the United States falls, there is nowhere to escape for freedom. No one is coming to save us. We are the last outpost of freedom in the world, and our Second Amendment is all that protects us. The ideals of this country must be protected at all costs, and we've already lost a significant portion of our population to mass psychosis, mind control, and or slow-acting poisons. In the words of rapper and activist Killer Mike, we must plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. May truth and love be with us all in these bizarre and uncertain times. And if you disagree with me, I'd like to hear why in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation. Thank you.